Hi everyone, John Miller from PDS. Today I want to provide you an important update on the CARES Act and the impact to education. We've been providing you a lot of updates along the way since President Trump signed this into law, and today we want to provide you an important update as a lot of activity has happened here at the end of April and now into May. You must act now. This is going to require action from you today. Now, government officials, health officials, school officials, nobody can guarantee when schools are going to open again. But one thing is very clear. You have to take steps today to make sure that remote learning is enabled. Whether you're in K through 12 or higher education, that's now a requirement for you. And that's what these funds are there to help you with. But you have to understand. There is an immense shortage of supply right now. I cannot stress this enough. And you do not want to be last in line when you put your technology orders in. So you have to take actions right now. This is a very serious shortage and can impact your ability to have technology at hand at the beginning of your school year. So let me walk you through this update on the CARES Act. As a quick reminder, the CARES Act includes $30.1 billion as an education stabilization fund. And this addresses the needs for both students and academic institutions through this pandemic. Now, the implications of this are tied directly to remote learning, or other people are categorizing this as distance learning or virtual learning or digital learning. But there are funds specifically, if we want to call this remote learning right now, there are funds set aside specifically for this, for both K through 12 and for higher education. I want to refer you to a couple of links right now. Now here at the state level, states are required to submit a form to gain access to CARES Act dollars. And this form became available on April 23rd. So at that point, states were able to apply on behalf of K through 12 school districts for that funding, and then it'd be upon each state to determine how they distribute those funds, which will largely be tied to Title I funding, free and reduced lunch rates. For higher education, the form is a little bit different. On this link, and I'd ask you to familiarize yourself with this, you're going to see that there's actually two different funds. Fund 1 is really around student emergency grants, and Fund 2 is really to address institutional costs. And within that, from the Department of Education, a secretary has stated this is to expand remote learning programs, to build IT capacity to support those programs, and to train faculty and staff to operate effectively in a remote learning environment. So I would encourage you to read through all those requirements on those links. Now, the distribution of funds on the higher education side will be directly from the federal government to the Higher Education Institute. When it gets to K through 12, the federal government will provide those dollars to the state, and the state will then distribute. So you're going to see different timing of this across all states. But as I mentioned before, it's so important to not wait until you have those dollars in hands, to take actions. One, to prepare for remote learning. And as you can, get your order in, especially for student devices, which have immense constraints right now. So what are some of the areas that you need to invest in for remote learning? Well, there's three areas I want to talk about with you today. And the first two I'll just briefly kind of introduce to you, but one is around instructional professional development. You have to ask yourself questions like, how are we going to conduct these classes? How do you leverage video? How do you interact with students? How do you share assignments? How do you respond to questions? So it's not just about enabling people to have technology at home, both instructor and student, but how do you then optimize that experience? And those are important questions for you to ask and make sure you provide the right professional development for your instructors. Now, the second area is really around student access. Now, part of equitable learning opportunities is addressing internet access, which still to this day, not every home has. So this is paramount to the success for remote learning. So access is an important part to be covered. And the third area, which is more in line with where my organization really helps so many districts today across the country, is around information technology and support. And this is the area that we've been guiding different school districts on how to respond to this throughout this pandemic. And the thing that we've been saying from the onset of this pandemic is you have to take the steps to map out your ideal learning platform in a remote environment. It's your ideal remote learning platform. We've been saying that since the onset of this pandemic, and now is the time to act on that. So beyond the professional development for instructors, beyond the access for student, it needs to then be enabled by information technology. Let me elaborate on that. So what are some of the things that IT leadership needs to consider? Let me talk about 4 areas that I believe are important in this. First is going to be instructional technology. How do you enable that teacher to have an optimized experience to educate the students? This means having a device conversation. What sort of displays, I say that plurally, are they going to need to have because of all the video that's going on? What other AV capabilities are they going to need to have? Docking stations and headset. But that's kind of a formula for the type of technology that an instructor will need. Now on the student, it largely comes down to what technology is your school leveraging? Are you a Chrome school, Microsoft school? And that'll dictate in many cases what the type of devices are that you're going to be looking at. Then you also have to ask yourself too, do you want to look at AMD or Intel? Intel is having immense shortages right now, and this is a time to give strong consideration. In fact, I would recommend that you look at AMD technology, especially for a cloud-based device for a Chromebook. It's, to me, a requirement to look at something that has the right availability when Intel is pushing out their deadlines months and months and months, to the point that I'm concerned they're not going to have ready products on the Chrome side, or at least for the masses of schools in time for next school year. So give strong consideration to AMD to give yourself enough time to be able to bring in this technology and have it impact your students in the next year. So again, you have to move fast. And these are the sort of conversations that PDS can help you with, but you have to get those technology orders in so fast. I cannot say it enough. That shortage is real. This is a global event where there are shortages for that technology. You have to act fast. And I can tell you, I'm going to give you a little statistic. The number of Chromebooks that have already been placed in the last 2 months exceeds what was placed last year. I'm not talking about for PDS. I'm talking about in the industry. So districts today are taking immediate action, even before they're getting the funding from the CARES Act, to get their orders in. And if you're not doing that already, please, please, please do that. You need to put yourself closer to the front of the line to have any shot at getting that technology in this next school year. Third area to focus on is around network access and security. So access management is critical for remote learning. How do you do that in a way where you can establish the right connectivity for your instructor, for your student, for that matter, for an administrator who may be working from home, but to do so with simplicity for the user, but also security to protect the district. So how do you establish that connection with that security? How do you ensure resiliency of connectivity? Data retention, data protection. Have you established appropriate administrative rights for the users? What about web content filtering? We talk about access, and maybe part of that is putting hotspots out in these homes of students. What are the guidelines you're going to put in place for how other people can use that are in that home? And how does your web content filtering, how does that apply for when somebody's actually working from home? These are things that are going to take on a heightened importance in remote learning, and that's where you need to work with somebody who has the right chops and moxie when it comes to enterprise technology, data center technology, and security. And the fourth area is really going to be around support. So this takes on some unique characteristics when you think about remote learning. Now, traditionally, we all recognize that instruction is done between Monday through Friday and 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., right? It's in a controlled environment. But now that's all changed, right? And one thing we've learned through this pandemic is, in many cases now, there's instructional direction giving out on a daily basis. Certainly there's collaborative time that's being done on a daily basis. But there's a lot more self-paced activity when it comes to student learning right now. So all of a sudden now lines are blurred between daytime and evening. Lines are blurred between weekday and weekend. And if people are kind of learning at their own pace and in non-traditional times, what is a domino effect of that from a support standpoint? And this is where I'd encourage any learning body, whether you're K through 12 or higher education, to really look and expand about what you can do for 24/7 support for your instructors and for your students. Because if they're working in non-traditional times, shouldn't they have access to the same technology experience regardless of what time of day that they're working? So there's ways to do that, and that's what I encourage you to work with somebody who can provide 24/7 support for all of those people who are working, again, students or instructors. And then also think about things like remote hands to make sure that your data center is optimized as well. But you can't afford for that not to be running either. So again, IT leadership needs to focus on instructional technology, student devices, network access and security, and support. Those are the 4 areas that I would concentrate on. Then you have to decide who are you going to partner with. And I think anytime you're facing a pandemic like this, when you think about who you procure technology from or who you seek guidance from, I think in many ways you can quickly determine who's a vendor for you today and who's a partner for you today. A vendor is going to be there transactionally for you. A partner is going to be there for you to help provide you guidance through this journey you're going on. And I think these are some considerations you have to give on who you're going to work with through this pandemic. And certainly I have some bias, and believe me, PDS is the right company, but nonetheless, let me give you some guidance on the right way to select on who you work with right now. First thing I would say is this: you have to have somebody who has state procurement contracts in place. Again, I think I mentioned a few times in this video, there are extreme constraints right now when it comes to products. And to think about doing an exhaustive RFP right now, I mean, you may not get products this year, calendar year, if you put too much time in between today and the time that you order that technology. You have to move fast on that. Now, the smart partners were proactive in reaching out and working with the state government to be on the state contracts, to be able to stand ready for you, to be able to allow you to execute on this funding that's becoming available. They've already pre-negotiated on your behalf. Folks, I cannot stress it enough, you must act now on this. And again, that's such an important criteria as you're looking at who you're going to work with right now. Has somebody already taken the steps to be on the state contract for you? Second thing, do they have localized and owned services? Let me stress to you why this is important right now. It would be an immense risk for you if you had your equipment sitting in a different geography, right? You know, think about this pandemic. We've had essentially state walls being shut down. We've had restrictions on crossing geographies. So can you imagine right now if you had your equipment sitting with somebody else who's going to configure this in a different state? That's an immense risk you'd be taking right now. And also, if it's some provider that you're buying the technology from who then is outsourcing that service work to somebody else, where do you stand in line then from a priority? So it's really important to work with somebody who, one, is going to be storing this equipment in your state, who is going to be doing the configuration of this equipment in your state. That's so important, and that's certainly a great lesson that we've seen through this pandemic. You want somebody who's resilient from future restrictions that are going to come from potential other lockdowns that could happen, and you want somebody who controls the outcome of service delivery. Okay, so state procurement contracts, localized and owned services. Third thing is you want somebody who can influence a supply chain, who is somebody who has the ability to call at the highest levels of the manufacturers of technology. Somebody who has clout, is designated as a leader in education. You know, that's a third consideration that you should be giving to who you're going to work with through this. And then the fourth thing is, does the organization have complete support capabilities for 24/7 by 365? One, to provide managed services specific to your devices, the physical hardware. And second, do they have that ability to provide support for you around the clock for students, for instructors, for administrators, potentially even NOC type capabilities to help manage your data center. If you're looking at who to work with right now, who to partner with, not just work with a vendor, but who to be a partner for you, they have to be elite in these 4 areas. Having the state procurement contracts, localize and own services, influence the supply chain, and 24/7 support capabilities, both for technology and for users. So now it's time to act. As I mentioned, funding is now clear. Supply chain is extremely challenged, and the next school year is not that far away. So it's so important, given each of those 3 things, that you act now. And I promise you, PDS stands ready. We are uniquely equipped to help you. We understand the CARES Act. We've readied ourselves for this. We've pre-negotiated contracts for you on behalf of you with the state. So you don't have to go through all those steps. We've already done that work for you. We have 100% control of our services, and all of those are executed within the geographies of our clients. That's how we work. That's how we tick. This makes us more resilient for any future lockdowns, and allows us to prioritize you. So make no mistake, PDS stands ready to serve you. So please give us a call. And in the interim, take care, stay safe, and be well. Thank you.